Let's go to Los Angeles Rams now, the defending division title champions. So they finished with a 10-7 record last season. I think this season really rides on Matthew Stafford's ability to stay healthy. He did return to full practice after a back injury kept him out of training camp. So at 37, time's not really on his side. And my question is, will he be able to weather a full season again? It's getting to a point where I just every time he takes a snap, I'm just wondering if a edge rusher gets to him, that might be the end of it. So they did add Devontae Adams after releasing Cooper Kupp to kind of get more explosive offense on their side. They must get more production from their leaky secondary from last season. Up front, they're great. I love Jared Verse, one of the best edge rushers, at least from a 25 and under standpoint. For me, too much has to go right for this team for them to be back in the playoffs. I'm actually predicting them to not make the playoffs this season. Age, I don't really trust what's going on with Devontae Adams being on this team. I think it's just a lot just for me has to go right, and a lot of it rides on Matthew Stafford.
So if you recall, this was the only team in last postseason that gave the Eagles any scare. Like, if you recall, they were going on a drive to win the game. And I think Joe Carter came up big, and then they threw it away on fourth down. But while I do think that's important, you also have to factor in the conditions for that game were horrible. So they just made the game really sloppy, and that you could argue that's maybe how the Rams were able to stay in it.
That was the equalizer. That kind of like leveled the playing field.
Yeah. But still, it's telling that they went into Philadelphia and nearly took down the champs, who I think were one of the better Super Bowl champs of this century. Yeah, this whole Matthew Stafford thing's been really weird. There's this whole conspiracy theory that he might even be dead because like no one saw him, and they're showing these before and after pictures of him where his teeth don't line up and stuff. But allegedly he is back, or his clone is here. But yeah, I agree with the fact obviously he's getting old, and I think that is a story because if he takes one bad hit, what are they going to do? I guess Jimmy G still their backup quarterback?
I believe so.
Okay. Yeah, because the offense wouldn't be the same with him there. I do think their O-line's pretty good. I think this is a Super Bowl caliber roster other than their secondary and Matthew Stafford's health. A lot of that has to do with how well they played in the playoffs last year. You kind of just seeing them, I feel like they stack up well. Plus, they have Sean McVay as their head coach, Super Bowl winning coach. But yeah, it's the whole thing just rides on Stafford staying healthy, which you don't know. Like, kind of compares to Peyton Manning in his final year at Denver. Yeah, they won the Super Bowl, but it was kind of in spite of him because no matter how great he had been that year, you could just tell it was the end. So you're kind of waiting for that with Stafford, but I don't know. Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, that's a pretty scary wide receiver duo. And I really love Kyron Williams as a running back. So yeah, all the pieces are there to still make one last final run with Stafford and Stafford McVay combo. But got to stay healthy. And I agree with what you said. The secondary does need to improve. They were definitely the weak link of that defense, but they're also a young defense. So more experience they get, the better they will hopefully get for their sake. And that could also definitely happen.
Yeah, and I think any team coached by Sean McVay is well prepared and can make up for any inconsistencies on defense, any injuries that may occur. But I think when your season's riding on an aging quarterback staying healthy, that's scarier to me than, say, the 49ers hoping that McCaffrey stays healthy. I think there's, when you have your quarterback, that's a huge piece. It's the most important position in any sport in America. So I'm seeing the Rams line at 9.5. What do you got it at?
I also see 9.5. Looking at their schedule, the only interesting note I took from that, very weird, but 5 of their first 7 games are against the AFC, which does kind of mean something because that means coming down the home stretch, it's all meaningful football. Like all those games matter in the playoff standings and all that. And that also gives them a chance to get off to a hot start because that means 3 of their first 4 games are against bad AFC South teams. Yeah, if Stafford stays healthy, they could get off to a hot start, and then it kind of comes down to that home stretch. Yeah, this is another one of those lines where 9 or 10 wins is right where I had them. I think they're gonna the schedule. Since I took the Cardinals under, I think I'm gonna go Rams over. The schedule is just too nice. I feel like for a team that won their division, but that doesn't mean it's gonna be that high over, and it doesn't mean you should follow my advice. But I will take the over 9.5.
Yeah, I'm going the opposite of you. I am going under. Getting a little bit of plus money, plus 105 on the under for the Rams. I just don't want to, I don't expect Stafford to play a full season. I think he's going to miss some games. I think he's going to take one too many hits, and he will be out for at least a short period of time where this could really hurt them in the win category. So I am going to take the under on the 9.5. But let's move on to the Seattle Seahawks, man. 10-7 record last season didn't get them the division title because of tiebreakers. But this season is very interesting. They let go of Geno Smith, who's a model of consistency at QB for them, and they bring in Sam Darnold, who had an amazing year with the Minnesota Vikings. We saw it all last season. It was an incredible year in Kevin O'Connell's system in Minnesota, but then turned into a bit of a pumpkin, back to what we remember of him with the Jets. And it all just kind of ruined the end of the season, really ruined what was a great year for them in Minnesota. So now he comes over to Seattle with a defensive head coach in Mike McDonald, who's done a great job with the Seattle defense. He was one of the best defensive coordinators in Baltimore. I think he's done a good job with Seattle. But when you get rid of Geno, who, yes, kept you around 9, 8 wins, 10 wins, but he never let you dip too far. And he was a model of consistency. So I think when you bring in someone who is such a wild card like Sam Darnold, I just can't trust it.
Yeah, Seahawks have had a winning record in the last 3 years. That's only resulted in one playoff appearance. So I guess that puts them in a slightly above mid tier, but not near playoff tier, obviously. Last year was if you just look at their schedule from last year, it was the absolute definition of a roller coaster. They started 3-0, then they went 1-5 after that. Then they had their bye week. Then they went 4-0 after the bye week. Then they went 0-2, and then they finished with 2 straight wins. So yeah, there was only one instance the entire year last year where there was a sandwich of wins and losses. So it was just super, super streaky team last year, but they still finished with a winning record. Like you said, McDonald's done a great job with this defense. I think it's still a very underrated defense. I don't think it's enough credit for how good they are. Leonard Williams. They added DeMarcus Lawrence from the Cowboys in the offseason. Devon Witherspoon in the secondary. I like Ernest Jones as a linebacker too. They're good. Yeah, very good defense. It doesn't get enough respect. But I absolutely do not trust Sam Darnold at all. Outside of the Minnesota system, as I mentioned before, I'm a Colts fan, and I did not want them to sign Sam Darnold in the offseason because they were looking for a free agent quarterback, and I did not want that. One, because they would have required too much money because of the season he had, and two, because I just do not see him repeating success especially to a system where it's a defensive system. Now he doesn't have a shortage of weapons, that he may have had with the Jets or the Panthers because you got Jackson Smith and Jigma, another one of your Ohio State Buckeyes, who's developed into a great receiver. They signed Cooper Kupp in the offseason. I don't know if that might be fine for a wide receiver too. It might be okay. And then Kenneth Walker, the third. I love him as a running back. Another underrated thing about the Seahawks.
Very.
So, yeah, he has weapons there, but I don't see any repetition from last year when it comes to Sam Darnold. I'm sorry, Seahawks fans, if you're high on him. And maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but that's just what I see.
Also hurt his paycheck when he had those back-to-back horrible games to close out last season. Probably could have gotten more if it wasn't for that. So I'm seeing their line at 7.5.
Oh, really? I have it at 8.5. 7.5. 7.5. I would take the over. 8.5. I was leaning. 8.5. I was staying away from. I was leaning under because Yeah, Sam Darnold, like you said, he's not as consistent as Geno, but if he does sometimes play to his potential, that's a little bit higher than Geno. And what's Geno done for you lately? Well, he's led you to 9-8 and 10-7 seasons. But I think there's going to be a little more bad than good, though. I would go. I have them right where the Cardinals are, 8-9. So I would go under 8.5. But at 7.5, I would maybe stay away.
Well, I went under 7.5. I'm getting plus 115 on that line. I'm banking on pumpkin Sam Darnold. That's what I'm going with here. Definitely being in, like you said, a defensive system. I see it right there at 7 wins, which will just get it right under. So it's not a super confident pick, especially with the schedule, with every team in this division schedule being fairly easy.
The issue is with bad QB play, that kind of offsets the easy schedule.
Right.
That's why, like what we said, Kyler Murray, he's kind of not, I wouldn't call him a great quarterback, but he can win games, and you'd feel better taking the easier schedule with him than you would Sam Darnold.
Yeah, definitely. So the way I have it playing out in my prediction, I got the 49ers winning the division, making a big comeback after a pretty down year from last year. So winning the division with the easiest schedule in the league. The Cardinals coming in at second, the Rams third, the Seahawks fourth. So it's a huge difference for me from last season to this season.
Yeah, flip Cardinals and Rams, and that's my standings. So not too different, but like we said, like I said at the beginning, these teams are really not that far apart from each other. If Sam Darnold, which I don't believe he will, but if he did somehow play like he did in Minnesota, you could argue the Seahawks could be division favorites. And that's how close these fourth place is to first place in this division.
Right, and these games too, like every game in the division is so much fun to watch. One of the more underrated divisional matchup games that you'll see over the course of the season. So I know these, being out west, these games might be a little bit later than we're used to, but these divisional matchups are pretty good.